The heat hit like judgment, a windless noon in a town that had stopped caring years ago. Cole Tanner lived on the edge of it, on a ranch with split fences, a mule too old to lie about its limp, and a house full of echoes that used to be laughter. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't much of anything, really. Just a man who kept showing up to the day, even when it didn't ask him to. Then came the boy. He appeared like forgotten mail. Thin, quiet, face streaked with road dust. Didn't knock. Just stood near the gate until Cole looked up from his work. 12? Maybe 13? Hard to say. Too young to carry silence that heavy. "You looking for work?" Cole asked. The boy nodded once. No voice. "No horses?" Another nod. "Eat?" A blink. "Sleep?" No answer. But the way he stared, like someone who hadn't done either proper in days, was answer enough. Cole scratched his jaw. "Well, hell. Come on, then." The boy didn't speak. Not that day. Not the next. But he worked. Straw hauled. Saddles cleaned. Mule fed without complaint. An art in itself. Cole tried not to notice how the boy flinched at loud noises, how he never turned his back, even when resting, how his eyes darted, measuring exits, windows, words. On the fourth morning, the boy stood by the well, rinsing his shirt in slow, deliberate motions. The sun hit him just right, and Cole, walking past with a bucket, froze. Across the boy's back were faded scars, not whip marks, not claw scratches, something more careful, more cruel, thin cuts, parallel, intentional. Cole didn't speak, didn't ask, but that night he left the stew pot fuller, pushed a second blanket onto the bunk, lit the lamp longer, and wrote a name in his ledger, Unknown Boy, tied to something terrible. The morning after Cole saw the boy's scars, something shifted. He didn't say a word about it, didn't ask, but the silence between them got louder, like a storm circling above dry land, waiting to break. Cole headed into town that afternoon, needed feed, a new handle for his axe, and answers he didn't know how to phrase. He stopped at Edna's general store, where rumor ran thicker than molasses in January. "You know anything about a boy running round here?" he asked, casual-like. Edna blinked over her spectacles. "Brown hair, quiet as snowfall. Seen him once. Was with that traveling preacher, Reverend Markson, I think." Cole stiffened. "Didn't know Markson kept company." "He didn't," Edna said. "Boy vanished soon after they passed through. Thought he wandered off." That night, Cole sat on the porch, watching the boy sketch shapes in the dirt with a stick. Circles, dashes, a pattern almost. "You ever hear of Markson?" Cole asked gently. The boy stopped drawing. His hand clenched around the stick. Then he shattered it with one squeeze and walked inside. Cole wasn't religious, but he'd heard things. Markson rode through towns like fire through wheat. Charismatic, loud, always preaching about sin, punishment, and correction. No one ever saw the places he kept his disciples, just heard the hymns echo at dusk. Cole poured himself a drink, left it untouched. The next morning, he watched the boy again at the well. Sunlight had a way of revealing what shadows tried to hide. More marks today. Fresh ones. Cole snapped. "We need to talk," he said. But the boy flinched, bolted toward the barn, and locked himself inside. Cole didn't chase him. He just stood outside, heart thundering like hooves in a canyon. "I ain't going to hurt you," he said, "and I sure as hell won't let anyone else do it either." Silence. Then a whisper, thin, shaken. "He said I was born broken." Cole felt his jaw lock. "Well then," he said, "maybe it's time the town remembered what broken men are capable of when they're done being quiet." Cole Tanner Hadn't spoken to a preacher since he buried his wife. Didn't see the point. God was silent, same as the grave. But now, as the boy's whisper echoed in his mind, he said I was born broken. Cole felt a fire climb up the spine he hadn't used to stand tall in years. The next morning, Cole hitched his mule and rode east, 3 towns over, to a place with a courthouse, a bar, and records kept beneath dust and denial. He wasn't looking for gospel. He was looking for truth. It took 3 days of asking wrong questions to the right people before someone finally muttered Markson's name with a wince. He had a place up near Dry Creek Ridge, the bartender said, polishing the same glass for the 4th time. Old mining outpost turned prayer house. Said he helped troubled youth find their way. He paused. But some kids never made it back down. Cole's breath went shallow. Anyone ever press him? The bartender snorted. That man had power, friend, money, the kind that builds churches and buries doubt. Back at the ranch, the boy hadn't spoken since that whisper. Cole found him sharpening an old horseshoe like a blade. "You ever think about running?" Cole asked. The boy didn't look up. "I did. And I came back. I figured I deserved it." Cole crouched low, his boots creaking against the barn floor. Deserve what? The boy blinked. Tears didn't fall. They clung to the edges like they feared the light. "They told me pain was proof I was loved, that it cleansed me." Cole froze. His knuckles whitened. "Didn't feel much like love," the boy added. That night, Cole couldn't sleep. He read old letters, ones his wife had kept from parishioners before her passing. There it was. Reverend Markson. Eloquence in ink. Promises about troubled youth retreats. No charge, just faith. Faith, Cole thought, had never been so expensive. He reached for his rifle, then hesitated. Killing a man wouldn't undo the boy's scars, but letting Markson roam free? That felt like letting silence win. The next day, Cole returned to town, this time to the sheriff. "Need to talk about Markson?" Sheriff Briggs didn't look up from his paperwork. "Ain't my jurisdiction." "But it's your town," Cole said coldly. "Your people." Briggs sighed. "You got proof?" Cole nodded. "I got a boy with scars. I got lies buried under hymns. I got enough rage to dig 'em up." The sheriff stared hard at him. "You do this, you'll make enemies." Cole tipped his hat. "Good. Been too long since I had company." Back at the ranch, the boy waited on the porch. Not afraid, not crouched. Just waiting. Cole sat beside him, handing over a sketch pad. "No more hiding," he said. "Tell it how you remember. Write it. Draw it. Scream it if you have to. We're not burying truth here." The boy stared at the blank page, then put pencil to paper. No hesitation, just motion. Fluid, determined. Cole watched the first lines form. An old chapel, a crooked cross, a man with 2 white teeth, and a child behind a locked door. By the time the boy filled the last page of his sketch pad, Cole Tanner had stopped calling him the boy. In his head, he started calling him Eli. Didn't know if that was his real name, but it felt right, like it matched the kind of courage that didn't announce itself. Eli's drawings weren't just scribbles, they were testimony. Chapel doors with thick bolts, a basement with chains, a circle of boys around a man with sermons in his mouth and scars in his hands. Cole stared at them for a long time, fingers twitching with fury. "Sheriff needs to see this," he said. Eli shook his head. "They won't believe me." Cole leaned forward, eye locked with Eli's. "They'll believe me." Back in town, Cole entered the sheriff's office like a fuse already lit. slapped the sketchbook on the desk. Sheriff Briggs flipped through it slowly. His mouth stayed shut, but his jaw told another story, tight, clenched. Then he got up, locked the office door, and poured a drink. "This'll cause hell," he muttered. "Markson's got friends in high places. Real high." Cole's voice was low. "So does the truth." Briggs rubbed his temple. "If we go at him direct, he'll disappear, vanish like smoke." Cole narrowed his eyes. "Then we light a fire big enough to choke it." Cole and Eli started whispering to the people that mattered, the right kind of loud mouths. Folks who didn't forget pain, even when told to. The town's seamstress, whose son had run off after attending Markson's retreat. The blacksmith, who remembered bruises on a neighbor's kid, dismissed as discipline. Within days, quiet murmurs became questions shouted across porches. Mothers started checking old church records. Fathers stared too long at faded photographs. Stories came flooding back, unspoken memories now given air and fury. But Markson wasn't blind. He rode into town early one morning, dressed like judgment and flanked by men who smelled of money and indifference. He preached in the square, voice sweet like poisoned honey. "This is the devil's work," he cried. "Those who spread lies shall taste justice." Eli stood at the back, half hidden. Cole was next to him, fists clenched. Markson spotted them. His smile faltered. "Our God is merciful," he said, eyes fixed on Cole. "But he sees." Cole stepped forward, voice clear and sharp. "So do we." That night, townsfolk gathered at the ranch. It wasn't planned, it just happened. Chairs dragged onto porches, lamps burning late. Eli stood in front of them all, sketchpad in hand. "I was told I was broken," he said. "But pain doesn't mean you're bad. It means someone else was." His voice wavered, but never broke. The room was dead silent. Then the seamstress stepped forward. "My son, he drew the same things," she whispered. Others nodded. One by one, they began to speak. And just like that, the silence broke for good. It started with whispers, then meetings. Now, it was movement. People who hadn't spoken in years were gathering in dusty living rooms and empty barns, staring at old notes, faded photographs, and memories they'd spent half their lives trying to forget. Cole walked from house to house, armed not with weapons, but with Eli's sketches and quiet conviction. He didn't shout. He asked, listened, let silence do the heavy lifting. In 3 days, 12 families came forward, each with stories that overlapped like scars under a shirt. All led back to Reverend Markson's traveling sermons, his youth retreats, his sanctuaries. At the heart of it all stood Eli, no longer the boy, no longer broken. He was still afraid, yes, but fear with purpose is fire, not weakness. One evening, Cole caught him practicing his speech in the barn, not a sermon, a truth. They said pain was discipline, Eli whispered to the rafters. But real discipline doesn't leave marks, doesn't make you hide from light. Cole leaned at the doorway. You gonna say that to the town? Eli nodded slowly. And to him. Sheriff Briggs, now visibly sweating under the weight of truth, finally stepped up. With evidence piling and testimonies mounting, he issued a warrant for Reverend Markson's questioning, a formality. Everyone knew the preacher wouldn't play by the rules. Still, it stirred the air. Markson held his final sermon the next morning outside the chapel he built with stolen offerings. Townsfolk gathered not for salvation, but to watch the storm. He was bold, smiling, spoke of betrayal, false prophets, the corruption of the innocent. His words fell like polished knives. Then Eli stepped forward. "No one corrupted me," he said, voice strong. "You did." The crowd stiffened. Markson's smile broke. His eyes narrowed. "You speak lies." Cole stepped up beside Eli. "Then take us to court. Let truth settle it." Markson turned, trying to retreat, but the sheriff was already there. "We need you to come with us." For the first time, the preacher didn't speak. He didn't bless, didn't curse, just stood, finally stripped of his armor of words. That night, the town didn't sleep. They gathered in Cole's barn again, now more sanctuary than stable. Kids came with sketch pads, adults came with memories, everyone came with something heavy and left with something lifted. A woman cried. A father cursed himself. A sister found closure in a crumpled drawing her brother once made. Eli watched it all, hands shaking, but heart still. "You did that," Cole whispered. "No," Eli said. "We did." The courthouse hadn't held a real trial in years, not since the land dispute between two ranchers turned into a fist fight and a week-long drinking contest. But now, people lined up before sunrise, half for justice, half for answers, and all for Eli. Cole stood beside him, dressed not for war but for clarity. He didn't wear his old deputy badge, but he carried its weight. Inside, the room felt tight, not by space, but by eyes. Eyes on Eli, eyes on Markson, eyes on the town itself, wondering how it had let silence stretch so long. Markson sat at the defendant's table, calm as river silt. His lawyer, a man from the city, wore arrogance like perfume, slick hair, sharp tongue. "This is a case built on stories," he told the judge. "Sketches, drawn by a child. Emotional, yes, but not evidence." The judge, an aging man with sand-colored eyes, raised a brow. "And the scars?" he asked quietly. The lawyer paused. "Injuries without clear cause are not proof of abuse?" Then Eli took the stand. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look down. His voice didn't shake. "Pain isn't the worst part," he said. "It's how they make you believe it's normal, that you're the problem, that if you just behave better, it'll stop." The courtroom went still. Cole watched as the boy transformed, not into something new, but into what he always was, strong, whole. Eli continued, describing the camps, the sermons, the long nights in the chapel basement, the faces of other boys, the sound of the lock turning, the cold. He opened his sketchbook and passed it to the bailiff. Page by page was entered into evidence, each line a wound, each drawing a witness. Markson didn't flinch, not once. When called to testify, he rose with charm still clinging to his clothes like dust. He spoke of grace, redemption, how troubled youth required structure, how their parents trusted him, how the scars must have come from their own sins. "They came to me broken," he said. "And how many left healed?" the prosecutor asked. Markson blinked. "Not all were ready." The courtroom murmured. Days passed. Witnesses spoke. One was a mother whose son vanished after attending a revival outside Dry Creek. Another was a former choir boy, now 30, who returned only to stand beside Eli and say, "I never forgot the basement." The judge listened. The town learned. And Cole? He stayed steady, every minute beside Eli. When asked to testify, he didn't tell stories. He told facts, dates, conversations, patterns, and a promise. "If you let this man walk free, we will all wear these scars again, some deeper, some quieter, but they will return." Finally, after 8 long days, the verdict came. Guilty on 3 counts of aggravated abuse. Guilty on 2 counts of false imprisonment. Guilty on reckless endangerment. It wasn't every charge, but it was enough. Enough to see Reverend Markson led out in cuffs. Enough for Eli to exhale for the first time in years. Outside, the town gathered in silence, not the same silence that hid pain, but one that made room for healing. The seamstress hugged her son. The blacksmith tipped his hat to Eli. Even Sheriff Briggs gave him a nod, the kind that says you did something good even when you weren't sure you could. Back at the ranch that night, Cole cooked too much stew. Eli set the table with too many spoons. It was habit now, planning for more, hoping for more. After dinner, Eli sat on the porch, sketching the stars. "What are you drawing?" Cole asked. "A place where people can be safe." Cole smiled. "You're already building it." The days after the trial moved slowly, not out of grief, but reflection. The kind of slowness that doesn't drag, but gives people time to think, breathe, rebuild. At Cole Tanner's ranch, the land hadn't changed, but everything else had. Eli rose with the sun now. He didn't flinch at every knock, didn't freeze when the wind slammed the barn doors. He moved like someone who'd been told he mattered and finally believed it. Town life began to shift. The chapel where Markson once preached sat boarded up. No hymns echoed anymore, just silence, the good kind, the kind that let truth bloom. A group of parents, once afraid to speak, started a committee. They called it the Lantern Circle, named after Eli's final sketch, a lantern hanging in the dark, lit from inside by something that couldn't burn out. Their mission was simple: protect children. Hear them. Never again pretend not to see scars wrapped in smiles. Eli was invited to speak at the first meeting. He stood at the front of the town hall holding a sketch he'd drawn that morning. "A place with open doors," he said, voice steady. "No locks. Just people willing to listen." Cole watched from the back, arms crossed, pride pressed into the lines of his face. He wasn't the kind of man who gave speeches, but he was the kind who built fences strong enough to keep the right people in and the wrong ones far away. After the meeting, this blacksmith approached him. "You ever think about turning this ranch into something more?" he asked. "A shelter? A school?" Cole shook his head. "I don't know a thing about running all that." "You know how to keep a boy alive," the blacksmith said. "That's more than most." Later that week, Cole rode into the hills with Eli. They didn't speak much, just moved through the trails, watching the sky burn into evening. "I used to think silence was safer," Eli said. Cole nodded. "It isn't. It just gives the wrong folks more room." They reached the ridge, where the valley stretched out like something waiting. Eli turned to Cole. "What if we built something here?" he asked. "For kids like me, so no one has to wait as long as I did." Cole didn't answer right away. He was staring at the land, at the open sky, at the possibility. Then he said, "Let's make room." The next morning, Cole began drafting plans, not for a ranch, but a refuge. Locals donated wood, nails, paint. The seamstress stitched blankets. The grocer left extra food without asking. Even Sheriff Briggs showed up with his old truck full of chairs. They didn't call it a sanctuary. Eli said that word still stung. They called it the Ridge House, a place where no questions were too hard, no story too broken. The sign out front read, "Come as you are, leave stronger." Before bed, Eli added one last drawing to his sketchbook, a star breaking through cloud cover, lighting up the face of a boy standing tall. Below it, he wrote, "Sometimes you find the people who stay," and below that, in smaller handwriting, "and sometimes you become one. The day the Ridge House opened, the wind came soft and steady, the kind that keeps a lantern lit. People came without flyers or sermons just to see if something broken could build something better. Cole stood on the porch beside the boy who changed everything. The cedar sign over them read what Eli had written, "Come as you are, leave stronger." Edna brought coffee. The seamstress brought quilts. The blacksmith brought hinges that clicked but didn't lock. Sheriff Briggs arrived last with a small box. He didn't explain. They waited, eyes on Cole, then on Eli. "I built this place because one boy knocked on a door he didn't think would open," Cole said. "I kept a ledger and wrote, 'Unknown boy, tied to something terrible.' I'm here to correct the record." He turned to the boy. "Say your name, the one you want." The boy breathed deep. "Eli." Cole handed Briggs a document. "I'm signing the ranch to a trust, the Lantern Circle, and Eli. Equal names, equal say." Cole set his old cattle brand T inside a circle into the coals, then pressed it into the cedar sign. Not ownership, promise. When the smoke cleared, the mark sat beside Eli's words. The town exhaled, quiet relief instead of cheers. Eli stepped forward. "If you're hurtin', you don't owe us proof or perfect words. You owe yourself a safe place to be exactly as you are. Scars won't vanish, but they won't be the only story." Inside, a blank wall waited. "Leave a handprint if you want," Cole said. "No names required, just proof we showed up." Palms in paint, palms on wood, tiny, scarred, steady, said, "I am here." Eli pressed his blue handprint in the center, then guided Cole's beside it. Briggs opened his box, a brass bell from the old courthouse. "Hang justice where it lives," he said. Eli rang it once. The clear note rolled across the ridge like an invitation. At dusk, a wagon creaked up the road, a woman and a wary boy. He stared at the sign, the bell, the wall of hands. "Do I need a name?" he whispered. "You need a hand," Eli answered. "The name can come after." Cole crouched. "You hungry?" The boy nodded. "Good, we got stew." Later, by the well where it all began, Eli handed Cole a tin cup. "Remember?" he asked. "I remember not knowing what to do," Cole said, "and doing it anyway." Eli looked back at the porch light and the room where kids would sleep without checking locks. "You once said kindness doesn't erase scars," he murmured. "But it changes what they mean." Cole asked, "Does it?" Eli nodded. "It means we lived." Letters started arriving from up and down the tracks, names of kids, names of helpers. People wanted to build their own ridge houses and ring their own bells. The Lantern Circle became more than meetings. It became a map. Cole opened his ledger, crossed out Unknown Boy, and wrote, "Eli Tanner, co-founder, Ridge House." Tied to something unbreakable, the bell rope swayed in a breeze no one could see. The mule complained about nothing. Inside, a child's laugh was answered by another. The town, once famous for what it didn't say, learned new ways to speak. A meeting stood up for, a casserole left without a knock, a life's work handed over because a boy taught a man what work was for. Lonely was the start, not the end, and when the ridge went quiet, the light stayed. Steady over wood and nails made into a promise. A door open, a lantern on. If this story tugged at your heart or pulled you deep into the dust and emotion of the Wild West, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap that bell so you never miss another unforgettable cowboy tale. And hey, drop a comment below. Which moment hit you hardest? Was it the scars at the well, the fire in the courtroom, or the silence finally breaking? I read every word, and your thoughts help us shape the next ride across the frontier. Your next favorite story might be just one click away. Let's saddle up for it together.